Now, this is supposed to broadcast to LinkedIn,
Okay.
but for some reason it just doesn't work. And I don't know why.
Oh, that's annoying. So see, it's all these technology issues, like something going on.
Yeah, because we have like 75 people signed up to come tonight.
That's dope.
Yeah, I'm like, oh wow. So it was a lot of good reminders. And so I was trying to do that today. And I was like, nothing was working.
Of
Technology
course,
is
of
killing us
course.
today.
It's all
That's
good.
all
See,
right.
technology already on the weekend, so
It's like, I'm
technology,
done.
right? We checked out. We
It's
said,
after 5.
yeah,
Like,
that
all
is
right,
all good. Hey, this is where we come in handy at, right? We'll still push through, so that is
that's
all to the
right. That's what the higher ed folks do. We be pushing through with a broke
man,
leg.
man.
I'm like, hold on, I could fix that hobbling over.
The adjustments are key.
I can't. I'm gonna give it like 2 more minutes because folks have to register until I get the link.
Oh,
So
okay,
take a sec, and then we'll go ahead and get started. So,
okay, no worries.
oh,
I'm just getting my. Okay.
1 minute, and we'll go ahead.
Getting myself organized too.
Mhm. So I might not ask all the questions. If some
Oh
other
yeah,
stuff comes up, like we might riff a little bit.
yeah, yeah. That's perfectly fine. I'm good for going out. Like we at least the questions are there at least for like I guess some type of guidance and stuff. But
Yeah. Oh
yeah,
yeah.
it's all good.
And then we'll definitely have some Q&A from the audience.
Okay.
Um, we'll go there. Hey, we've got folks from New York via Poland, Bay Area.
Wow.
I love it.
Shout out to the Bay Area.
Boo. No, I'm just kidding. That's horrible. I actually did love the Bay Area. It was just a
Yeah, it
strange
was just,
experience in
of
San
course. I had the experience. That's for sure.
Jose.
I definitely had the experience. But culturally, cool.
Yes,
Professionally,
we'll get it. So yeah, let's
right.
definitely have love for the Bay Area.
Always, always got love for the Bay.
NYC, nice. All right, we're gonna go ahead and get started. And when I reshare this video, I will cut all the front portion out.
Okay, yeah, no worries, no worries.
We're gonna go ahead and get started. We have a great guest tonight,
Oh.
Daryn Moore. We're gonna say he's on location. Um, Somewhere international, and that's why we can't get his video feed. That's the story we're sticking with. But I'm super excited to have Daryn here tonight. And so, what we're going to do is, I have a couple of questions that I want to ask. You all can also put questions here in the comments section, and I will read them because I want to make sure that if we get any questions answered, it's yours here in the audience. And then there will be some time for Q&A at the end, just in case. We'll probably have some late stragglers here and there. And I have a special offer at the end that I'm offering people that are registered for this event. That'll be a special offer for folks who are looking for some help with their resume and interview preparation. So you might want to stick around for that. So let's go ahead and jump into it. So Daryn, I don't know if you know this, but I'm pretty sure you were like my first client when I
Oh,
started
wow.
coaching.
Okay. Wow. Okay. Okay.
So it's wild to kind of come full circle in this moment, and you've been in your job for what, a year now?
It's been a year and a half actually. Yeah, it's been
Oh my
since February 2022, so a little bit over a year and a half, right? Like I think like that's what like yeah, like what is it, a year and 8 months, something like that? Yeah, wow.
yeah, I know, wild. But if you just wanna, you can introduce yourself and just tell a little bit about yourself and what you do, and then we'll get into the nitty gritty.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So good afternoon or good evening or all those wonderful things. Everyone, my name is Daryn Moore. I am currently I'm a university recruiter for a software company. That pretty much that means that I manage and facilitate the internship program for this company. So that means that we go to different universities, attending college fairs, seeking out applicants to build up our talent pool, to join our internship program, but also on the flip side of just the recruiting, also help to facilitate the internship program. So that means that we are building the programming, the uh, content that goes into it, everything just leading up to the internship program, whether it's the um, swag management or brand management or swag management, whatever, the types of programs. So we have different things like speaker engagement series and volunteer events and some social events that we, all put together to help like shape the interns experience outside of just the work that they're doing. But before I got into this role, I actually worked. Majority of my career was higher education. I started what was that like 2013 or something. Started working like in not for profit higher ed. So that's what I consider to be, like my true start because that's when I realized what I wanted to do. Did the whole gamut of starting off in higher ed, then started doing I started my grad program in college student affairs, and just made a few transitions throughout the years when I definitely graduated the program, and just had that navigation right of going through um, not the process, but going through the ranks of things of okay, this is a program that I'm interested in, or this is a job that I want to do, or this is the route that I want to take my career, right? But of course, the funny thing about plans is that we can make all the plans in the world, but doesn't necessarily mean that's the way that things are going to go. It's good to have like as like we were talking about like having it as like a compass, right, and something like to help you navigate, but it doesn't necessarily mean that things are going to go exactly like this is as we know how life goes. It throws you, wrenches, it throws you, forks in the road. You got to navigate, you got to pivot. And I think that's the fun part of life, even though it can be annoying at times. That's the fun is just being able to, just kind of navigate things and kind of switch up accordingly. But so just to kind of like wrap a little bit of that up because I don't want to take. I know we got some questions to hop into, but that's navigating that higher ed space. Just taking a step back and like seeing how things were. We know how the pandemic had been and has been, and how things were going, and it was just like okay, what's something else that I can do, but also still kind of tap into these passions. And, I love higher ed, love what higher ed does, love what it stands for. But we all know sometimes it cannot be the most progressive in a lot of ways. I could say, I guess progressive would be probably the best way to probably put it and what I'm trying to get at. So, right. So just trying to find ways to still tap into, those passions and those areas that, you have an interest in a different way, right? So still focusing on what that final goal is, but also knowing like, okay, I have this, or a final goal is subjective, right? So I have this idea of what I want to do, but there's a different way that I can still get this done. And so that's really what it was, is just stepping back to kind of see what that looks like and, finding an opportunity that presented itself. And pretty much here we are now. So I know I rambled for a little bit, so my bad. But
No, it's
yeah,
good to get the context.
right, exactly. I was trying to put together some context though for you.
So let me ask this question, because I think you reached out to me on LinkedIn, and what was kind of the catalyst for you being like, I'm going to reach out to Kristen and see if she can get me out of higher education, or see if there's other options. What was the catalyst to make you want to kind of change industries?
Yo, that's a great question, right? I think it was us having a mutual contact, and I think for whatever reason I was like, I don't know. I was like, I don't know if we had met before, if we had just connected professionally.
Yes,
I was like,
briefly,
yeah,
San
very
Jose.
briefly. Right. And I was like, hold on. And then I'm like following you, and I'm just kind of seeing like, just what you've been doing and just updates. And I was like, okay. And then something I think came up. It might have been a position. And I think I might have reached out to you and was like, hey, like, Can you kind of help me with this? Because I think you were either working there, or you might have some connection there or something. It was when it was the gig for who was the
Pinterest?
job? I think it was a Pinterest gig. I
Yeah.
think it was a
Okay.
Pinterest gig. And so, when you're looking at roles on LinkedIn, it'll typically tell you that you have like somebody connected there, that you can, one of your connections, it works there or something like that. And so I think I had reached out to you there. And then from there, we just started talking. And then it was just like, oh, let me take a look at your materials. And then I'm not even sure if you were even starting, your consulting and your career coaching then, but you were just like, let me just take a look at your resume. And then you took a look at it. And then we just legit, the conversations were around shaping the resume, but also just like making things make sense. And I think that's what it boiled down to. So I guess I'm not sure, but I think that's when the brainchild started for you with that.
It did. I think there was actually, you were a part of a group of like 5 or 6 people, and I said, "These are gonna be the beta test as to whether or not I'm doing this career coaching thing, and we're gonna see
Okay.
how it goes." And all of you got jobs. I was like, "I think I'm
Wow.
onto something." Every
Wow.
last one of y'all got jobs.
That is dope. Okay. See, I didn't even know. Like, I mean, I know I remember after being you had connected, I think I told one of my old coworkers to also connect with you or with not
He was one of
Folaba.
the 5.
Yeah. Oh, Folaba.
Yeah.
Okay. Got you. And so yeah, I was just like, I mean, I was like, she helped me, definitely. I was like, I'm not sure, if she's because I thought that you were just like, some people just have like a passion for these because you didn't state exactly what you were doing, but you were open. But I was like, I don't know. I was like, you got to be mindful because people be working and we don't know, so I just gave them a lot of context before reaching out because I ain't wanted to be like, oh, Daryn has sent somebody over here and they just trying to like extract all my talent, without pouring back into me. I was like, nope, not on my watch.
It is true. When I was working at Pinterest, I had a ton of like higher ed folks. That's my industry. I was in it for 15 years. And a lot of folks were like, "How did you do that?" And I'm like,
Yeah,
"I applied for a contract job. I didn't even know it was, something that was possible." And then everybody kind of started reaching out to me. And I was like, wow, there's a lot of unhappy people in higher ed, or they're just looking
man.
for something new. They have
That's
this
it.
skill
That's it.
set and want to do something new. So for you, the catalyst was you saw a job, you were interested in it, but it wasn't higher ed, right?
Right. So even a little bit more context to that, right? So I think remember at the beginning of this call we talked about, living in the Bay Area.
Hmm.
The Bay Area is like one of those things where, especially Silicon Valley, right? It's one of those things I don't think you can be around it and not be impacted by it some way, somehow, right? Like even something as simple like that we might think of like DoorDash or Uber Eats or Postmates, right? Like you have to utilize these things or you're utilizing them as you're going forward. So me moving out to the Bay Area, I didn't know anything about Postmates. I didn't know anything about
Hmm.
like, I heard about like DoorDash and Uber Eats. And I was like, oh, okay. But coming from, I think I moved out there from Florida. So, and where I was at Florida, you weren't really using Uber Eats or Postmates or none of that like that. So you're impacted by all these things. But of course, I mean, you had things like, online e-commerce with, PayPal and, using, Facebook and Google and
Silicon
Apple,
Valley.
right. And Apple products, right. And all these things, right. So, with that, you're getting out to where the mecca of all these things is, right. This is the hub of all of this innovation. And so you're like, hold on, I'm around all this stuff. So you mean there's actual jobs here? So, just you meet people are working. You're like, oh, I didn't even know that these types of jobs existed. Then you're like,
Yep.
well, I wonder how does education align with this? And then you start trying to like dig a little deeper. And so just out of curiosity, you start to pull back a little bit more and you start to uncover more and you start to get even more and more curious. And so I think I just had a bug and it just, bit me. But I think just the itch for that transition just grew more and more gradual over time. And so I think that's really what led to me like being interested. So it wasn't just I was just like, oh, let me just look at a job. It was like, oh,
Mhm.
I have friends that are doing this same exact thing, transitioning from higher ed into these roles. But I'm like, but could I do this? Or what does this look like for me? Or how's this even possible? Right. But I guess that's the good thing. I'm not the trailblazer that did it, but a lot of people in front of me were, and it just impacted me. And so reaching out to them and reaching out to resources and tapping in. So yeah, it led to me looking, and here we are.
Yep. And I think Diana, our mutual friend, she was
Yeah.
like Obivory. She was the first to kind of that I knew that kind of left higher ed.
Mm,
She was getting interviews left and right, and I was like, hold on, Um,
right. What's
right?
going
And
on here?
I thought maybe it's because she worked for Associated Students, and I'm like, I know they're a whole different beast and all that. But when we started talking through her resume, it was like, wait a minute, we do a lot of the same stuff. And she was just kind of the first to jump out. And so that's when you start asking questions like,
Uh-huh.
okay, wait, if she did it, we have similar experience, and we are in this hub of being in Silicon Valley. Like,
Hmm.
hold on, there might be some options here. And then I feel like after that, a lot of other people started kind of leaving or like transitioning into the field. But what has it been like, or what was it like? I would say in the beginning, if you want to take yourself back when you
Oof.
did transition and you're in this new role, because it took us a minute to get you a role, but like
Yeah.
once you got interviews, you was getting them left and right.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's wild, and I think it's I think it's a bit of everything. So I take you back. What is it? October 2021. I'll never
Oh
forget.
my gosh.
Just kind of like a bit of the start. So I'm gonna take you through a little bit of a timeline. Um, I think I had took just like it was the first time I had been out back to the Bay since I moved in 2019, but also this was like still kind of fresh in the pandemic, so a lot was like
Mhm.
different, a lot had changed, but this was my first, time back. So of course, going back to visit friends and, just go back to my old stomping grounds and just having conversations with my friends. And the more and more they started telling me about, we just, get into talking about life and work and all those things. And as they're telling me about their jobs, I'm like seeing how bright eyed and how excited they are and how like,
They
that
don't get
glowing
tired.
what that glow, that look of that glow and all that good stuff. And I'm like, man, I was like, okay, all right, I'm ready. I'm ready. I was like, at the end of that trip, I just said, I'm ready. I'm ready to make, this move. I'm ready to, jump into the game. I think I have an idea of what I want to do, but not even just that. I have the resources, hopefully, right? And the proper questions to ask. And I think that's the biggest thing is just, kind of what you want to do in a sense, but you don't know how to go about doing it. But after
Mhm.
these conversations, you're just like, huh. It's like, okay, so I know how to do this a little bit better. I know how to the outreach is a little bit more. People are like, oh, utilize your LinkedIn network, connect with these people, try these things. And then it starts to encompass all that you're doing. Your hunt starts to look a little bit more structured. You're reaching out to people on LinkedIn at specific companies that you might be interested in, but not just reaching out to people, but people who either have a similar role or in the role that you might be looking at, and you're contacting them directly. Hey, what did you do? What does this look like?
Mhm.
Not to say that it always works, right? Because not
Right.
everybody is going to respond to you. And I got messages that are still unread after 2 years, and that's
Ah.
perfectly fine. I completely understand because we're legit all busy, right? And
Mhm.
especially like depending on the timing and that September, October
Yeah.
realm in university recruiting is extremely busy. Like, I mean, I'm out and about right now, right? So,
Mhm.
it's one of those things where, you just really like, it sounds corny, but it sounds cliche, but really utilizing your resources of tapping in with the people. But it's not just tapping in with people, because sometimes it could be a little bit it could be a little bit ingenuine or whatnot, where it's like, oh, you're only reaching out to me because I have this connection or I have this. It's like, no, it's not necessarily the truth. It's, I'm curious about what you're doing, but you're also at a company that has a role that I'm interested in. So I'm just curious, what does that look like for you? I don't want to just connect because of what you do, but
Right.
because of the similarity that we share. But it's just like sometimes you kind of have to build, not kind of, but you should build that relationship if possible. And it's really hard to do like over LinkedIn and stuff like that. But maybe just
Mhm.
do like a maybe 10-15 minute chat, just kind of like before even asking for anything. You don't just reach out and say, hey, can you give me? It's, hey, can I learn from you? Can I ask you some questions? Can I, whichever, before you're asking for any type of, it's just like a common courtesy, right? Like, you don't just show up to somebody's house and as soon as you walk through the door, you're going directly to their fridge with you let them, right. You letting them offer you first, right? Before it comes to that. And just allowing yourself to be quote unquote hosted. So, just kind of be mindful of those types of things and just being courteous of others. I think is also key. But like I say all that to say, just, when you're tapping into those resources, just really be genuine about your intentions, right? And how you're reaching out to people, because some of those things can rub people wrong. And I mean, I can say sometimes I get rubbed wrong by it. I'm human as well. And I also know that I can't take it super personal, because sometimes people just don't know you. But it's I'm not gonna lie, it can be a little annoying when someone is just like, oh, can you give me? And it's just like, you haven't even said hello. You didn't even, there's just nothing.
You don't even know my first name.
At all. It's like, none of those things. And it's just like, come on now. But, so just, being mindful, having that mindfulness, right? So I try to take that approach with anybody I reach out to before I ask for them to do anything. And I even still have a hard time asking anyone to do anything, just because I don't want people to think, and these are some of my best friends, that I don't want them to think that I just want something from them, even though it's just like, they're like, are you serious? It's like, if you don't ask me, for what it is you want, or if you don't just, utilize me, like, I'm here for that. But it's always tough. And that's how it's always been for me. So
do you think there's anything cultural that has to do with that? Because I'm very similar. I'm very self-sufficient that way. And I feel like we will be on the struggle bus as African Americans before we ask somebody for help, because we're so used to having to be very resourceful and self-sufficient. Even when our own people are trying to help us, usually that's the thing, is when our own people are like, okay, I see you struggling.
Right. Let me help you. Right. Oh my goodness. It has to be a cultural thing. And I think it's because, for so long, like you said, like we're taught, like, that independency. But I think we have to get back to the mindset of the village, right? Of us helping each other, that's the purpose of having community. That's the purpose behind building and cultivating relationships. We are to help each other out, and we can't look at it as solely, especially when it's genuine relationships, right? When it's people that you actually know, people that you've broken bread with, or that you've, have a relationship that's been built, that's been, stacked up on something that, is sustainable, and something that even is long lasting. You have to be like, what, I should be able to access. I am comfortable with that. And a lot of times people will create that space, or maybe it's also like, well, they've never really asked me for something. And I feel like if I ask them for something, it'll be like, people start playing the favors game. And I was just like, well, my friends have never really been like that. It's you do for others because that's what you want to do. You're not doing it because you want them. Oh, if I do this for you, then you got to do this for me. It's never really been like that. Not with real friends, I would say, but I think it might be a cultural thing. That's I never even looked at it like that for real. I thought it was just, maybe an upbringing thing, or maybe a personal thing, but it's probably a whole, list of things that it could be tied into. But I definitely think that culture is one of them too.
For sure. And I would be remiss if I didn't have you mention that you are a part of a very important group of family that's very good at networking and supporting each other. So, what organization, Greek organization, do you represent, Daryn?
Yeah, definitely. Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated. Shout out to the pros.
I was waiting for it. I was like, I gotta let him do the whole thing.
Right. No, it's huge, right? And one of the things I will say, right? People say, "Oh, you have this automatic network." No, it still doesn't work like that. I don't care what anybody says. Nothing. Just because you're a part of it, you're close to it, you're affiliated. None of those things is guaranteed. Because I mean, yes, it helps, but it doesn't mean just because I'm connected, I can walk in to someone and then they're part of my fraternity and they're going to automatically hook me up. It's just like, no. Again, it goes back to having those conversations, building that relationship, building that rapport, and then showcasing, what it is. Well, oh, this is an area of interest that I have, and you are also a part of this. And I just was wondering if you could kind of like maybe give me some tools of the trade, or, allow me to kind of like pick your brain or have a session or learn something from you. Right. So it's still, regardless of any orgs or anything like that, you may be a part of or that you're connected to, you still, it's back to what I was just talking about of cultivating relationships. And not to say that you have to be best of friends, but at least make it known like what you're looking for, but also, take the time to like get to know, like nobody is going to be like, oh, okay, we're part of this fraternity, so let me just go ahead and just give you this job. I mean, some people will, right? I will say that hasn't been my experience. So again, everybody's experience, right? Everybody's experience could be super different. But for myself, it's just like, no, I still want to kind of know a little bit more or if someone can help me or even point me in the right direction. Like I never say, like this is something I always say. It's just like, okay, the most I could do is at least have the conversation with them, right? And not just I'm not expecting them to give me a job. I'm not expecting them to I'm not expecting this to lead to something, but it's more so like getting that proper start in the right direction. Like if I'm, 2 doors in front of somebody and they need help to get through that second door, let me open that door for them so that they can also get through, right? Let me make it a little bit easier. That's really what it's about, is barrier removal, I think, ultimately, right? So if I can remove any type of barrier, any type of hindrance for someone that's trying to do something similar to me, why not go ahead and do it and make it easy? So that's the same approach that I take of, connecting with someone in my org that can assist me with like, hey, like I'm interested. Can you point me in the right direction? What do I need to do? Different things like that. Just it's almost like you're showing your interest all over again.
But I think you bring up a good point in kind of using that network, using those referrals to kind of help, but making sure that they're genuine. Because I got a ton of people in my DMs when I was working at Pinterest, but I answered every single one of them because I realized that I was kind of like a bit of an anomaly to have worked in higher
Mm,
education. Like it didn't seem like it was a normal thing. And I was
right.
like, this has to be something that's strange because so many people are like, how did you do that? And I'm just like, I just applied. And so I answered every single one of my messages, unless it was like, a solicitor or something
Of
like that.
course. Of
But
course.
I made sure to because I'm just like, I've been in this field for so long and I wish somebody had come along me and been like, you know what, there's a way out. Um, and here's some help for it. So yeah, I want to get this question answered because I think this is actually really, really important
Okay.
in the comments here because we didn't know any of this when we all got our tech jobs, and I know now after having been laid off. But the question is, how would the thousands of tech and other industry layoffs impact a change into a new career? So if you were to talk to somebody today who's like, I am thinking about jumping into higher ed, I would probably be a little shaky about the recruiting side of it, maybe because those were the first people to go.
Yeah.
At least that was the department that I was in, was under people operations, and recruiting folks were kind of the first to kind of go a little bit. So, what would you say about that to somebody that's like, yeah, that's great, you work in tech, but everybody's getting laid off. So, like, how
Yeah.
do you push that?
Yeah. I think it's really just following I would recommend that they follow the trends, right? And seeing where things are. And like you said, unfortunately, the side of the house that typically is going to go first is going to be that HR, recruiting, like you said, people ops. Some people, it's different, right? HR and people ops can be the same thing. It could be under different things, talent acquisition, all that good
Hmm.
stuff, but they're usually under like the same umbrella. So really just follow those trends, right? Like my thing is, if I'm trying to leave higher ed and I'm like, oh man, I want to go into university recruiting, today's university recruiting, I'm gonna keep it real. I would not recommend making that particular jump just because it's so fickle. Like it's really, really, really fickle out here and trying to like make that move or make that transition. I mean, it could be anything. Like have friends that are looking or in roles and trying to move around, and they're running into the issue of, man, like I'm interviewing, but I'm not getting anywhere, or I'm interviewing and they gave me this type of like they drew it this type of perspective in a way for me to look at it, of saying, before in the industry it might have been like, maybe like 100 people a role, right, that you might be looking at.
Hmm.
Now it's like maybe 500 to 1,000 people a role that you might be looking at in that particular role. So it makes it a bit tough, regardless of how amazing you are as a candidate. Because I mean, I'll say this, I mean, I know we got some outliers, but everybody's an amazing candidate, right? Everybody can, do what it is that they do, right?
Hmm.
So just think of like that times 20 that you're up against, right? Or times 2,000 that you're up against. And that's, um, going to be pretty tough and going to make it even much more competitive. So I would just look at what areas are actually like growing, right, when it comes to jumping out of the field, but also where is there expected to be even more and more growth in the future. Like, of course, I'll say this, the technical side ain't going nowhere. So that's
Yeah.
where you're going to see a lot more of the growth. So, I mean, look at how AI has hit the scene and just blew up everything, right? And that's another aspect that's growing. So maybe, and I'm trying to like find my, like digital like things that I can do on the side that can help me like, just to make sure and staying in the loop, because you never know, right? But just maybe picking up some skills, maybe some basic coding, right? Maybe just some different types of just like programs that people are using, whether it's like different. I'm just going to throw out some stuff like Power BI, or learning like that UX, the UI, that learning that side of the house, when it comes to maybe like Figma, or Adobe, or just different things like that. Or if you're interested in coding, right, learning those languages when it comes to like Python and HTML and SQL. I'm throwing out a lot of acronyms and verbiage and language, but these are all things that employers are looking for their candidates to like be a part of, or I mean to know of, and to have some type of comfort and familiarity with. So it's really just researching the areas that you want to go into, but also understanding like, does this area have growth? Is there limits that come with it? What are, and everything comes with its risk and its reward. So what are some of the risks if I jump into this? What are some of the rewards? And if those rewards outweigh the risk, I say go for it. And sometimes it might just be only risky and not really much reward at the moment. Sometimes you can take that too. It's really on what you can handle. Like for myself, I'll say I don't have kids. I don't have family that I'm like supporting at this particular moment. So I can kind of take a little bit more risk with things. And not everybody has that. I don't know if you consider it a privilege or not, but not everybody has that privilege, to do that, or has the ability to do so. So that might not be something that makes sense to you. So really just kind of weighing out, okay, is this worthwhile for me to transition? But also even looking at different fields, like you have, I mean, they just averted, a shutdown, but you got government roles, you got nonprofit roles. What is it that you're specifically seeking? And I also will say this, that I'm about to go, not trying to go on a tangent, but don't get attached to a name. So everybody's going to, when applying for jobs and they think in tech, what are they going to do? Go with what they're familiar with. They're going to go with, the Apple. They're going to go with the Meta, Facebook. They're going to go with, the
Google and all
that good stuff. Anything that's, those big names. I mean, and they're great companies, absolutely. But you got to think everybody's trying to go there. So why not look for some of maybe those diamonds in the rough, maybe some of those niche, industries. Like my industry, I didn't know a lot about it until I found the role. But my industry, or my company, they are in the automotive software company, right? So they work with car dealerships. So that's something that's like, oh, it's software for car dealerships. That's super niche. Like there's not a lot of companies that do that.
Never think about that. Like, where I want to work? A place that does software for cars. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Do the research.
Exactly. So just start thinking about, different things outside of the box. And you can of course look at those bigger companies, but then just think of things that you use regularly. Like if I look around my apartment, I have a Samsung TV, right, that I'm looking at. I'm working off of an Apple laptop using some type of video conferencing software, right? So what are different, just think of different things that can go into that, or even just corporately, right? Like Target, looking at Target, or looking at, medical company. Just think as much outside the box as you can think, whatever product or space that you can think of. Just think of a company that's attached to that, and maybe look at them. Something that you wouldn't need, that's not even something that's maybe not a household name, something that's very small, or not even small, but just like they're just there, but they're just like hidden in the background that you wouldn't even think about, and jump into it. Shoot, you got medical technology, you got so many things that you can get into. So don't get attached to solely the big names, because you're going to really be disappointed extremely quick when it comes to that application process, because you got to think everybody's trying to get there, and it's beyond competitive. If you thought the market was competitive for quote unquote regular roles, it's even more competitive at these bigger corporations. So yeah, that's one huge piece of advice I say, is just don't get married to the name. More so get married. Don't get married to too much, but try not to get married to, just try to get married to the opportunity.
No, I like that. And that's something that I do try to share with clients. Is like, I know everybody wants to kind of work at a big company because they're also thinking like dollar signs. But I'm like, if you're coming out of education, you are off the bat going to make more than what you probably make right now. And I
Absolutely.
get like people are like, I want to get that six figures, this and that. And I'm like, it might take a minute to get there, but you will get probably a better offer than you have. But look at some other places. Now, I say go to both, especially if you have a connection at some of these larger companies, a referral, like use that referral. But also look at some of these, these other jobs or these other companies that are out there. And I love the
Mhm.
idea of kind of looking around and being like, well, who's the company that made my mouse? Nulaxi. I don't even know who that is. I'm
Right.
gonna look them up
Right. 'Cause-
and see if they're hiring because even the stuff we use every day, the programs, the systems, the apps, they might be hiring. And
That's it.
I think there's something to be said for kind of the smaller, mid-sized companies, maybe being a little bit more stable. And I know that's not true of everybody, but I think when you are some of these larger, companies in like Silicon Valley, where they know they're going to get a ton of applicants, so they
Uh-huh.
are hiring a ton of recruiters, and then oops, something happens, and you got to pull back on that. Whereas I think sometimes maybe some of the smaller mid-sized companies, they don't have that much money to do something with that. So they might be a little bit more conservative. And so maybe layoffs might be a little bit less. But I also agree with you in that it also depends on the industry. There's stuff
That's
that's
it.
not going anywhere, right?
That's it. That's it.
And there's like looking at the thing, we're always going to need hospitals. We are always going to need, cars. Well, I don't know. Well, I would probably be going like the route of like the Tesla route,
Right.
or any kind of
Electric
those
vehicle.
like yeah, like anything that's like yeah, automotive technology and whatnot, like you do. And so I think that that's really good information to give to people as to yes, you can apply for those big name jobs, but consider the other ones and look and see because sometimes you'll get a better deal there in terms of
Hmm.
benefits terms of the ability to be even remote because these big companies are kind of some of them are pulling back
Yeah,
on being
you
remote.
see these scale backs. They're like, oh, we need you in 4 days a week. What?
What happened?
Y'all didn't care before if I was in office. Oh, you got this big old space that you need to fill up, right, to get your money's worth. So now you're like,
Mhm.
oh, second thought, come on back, JK, JK.
uh, what skills do you think that from higher ed that you have brought with you to kind of the corporate side? So things that you did in higher ed or skills that you had that you feel like have been
Ooh.
super useful in this role working kind of on the corporate side of things when it comes to recruiting.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say I think one of my strongest that I brought is definitely my relationship building.
Mm,
It's something that not only is in my personal life that I value, but I think it helps in the workplace because you're having to, and especially as a university recruiter, you're trying to match interns with the proper hiring managers to make sure that they get their best intern experience through the summer. So you're having to constantly connect with these hiring managers and kind of like figure out you're trying to be both. You're trying to figure out exactly what they want from an intern, and then you're trying to help interns to get with the perfect hiring manager for the experience that they're looking for. So, when it comes to that relationship building, it's important to be able to have that skill of navigating those different spaces and being comfortable talking with different groups and different parties of people, because of course, I mean, one of the biggest things is personalities. They're going to be different every step of the way with every single person. So to be able to um have the ability to bring that forward, that relationship building skill, I think is key. Of
mhm,
course, teamwork. I mean, a lot of the skills that you think about, in higher ed, the teamwork, the being able to kind of work through ambiguity. Because sometimes you're given tasks or you have tasks to complete, but don't necessarily have the most clear instructions. You kind
mm,
of just got to figure it out because the end is the vision, right? That's what it is.
yep,
But the route to get there, you kind of got to create that yourself, or you kind of got to figure out how to get there, and you still got to do it in a way that is how do you say it? You got to do it in a way that is easily understood by everybody
mm,
that you're delivering whatever this end result to. So they're just like, oh yeah, we know we didn't give you clear instructions, but we need you to make we need you to go in this direction. It's like it's almost like I equate it to going from MapQuest to Google Maps, right? Like you got to print you're printing instructions. Look, you got to print out the instructions with no ink in your printer, and then you were the one that has to fill in what the directions are, kind of, sort of, right? So you got to be able to know what that looks like. So you're trying to go from, okay, let me not print from a printer that doesn't have any ink to, oh, you know what? Let me just utilize the Google Maps and, make this as seamless as possible. So the more that you do something, the more familiar you become with it. And I can tell you this route. Okay, you're going to go left here. You're going to turn, 0.3 miles. You're going to go right. Then you're going to merge, and then you're going to keep going. So after a while what that route looks like because you've done it so much. So being able to kind of break things down in that, and just really still bring put your personality on things. Because one of the things that I don't like repetitive, and I don't like boring, and I don't like things that don't have any don't have no flavor. It's just it's all right, let me bring a little bit of myself into this, right? Let me put a bit of my personality, a bit of my spin. So, when it comes to us facilitating workshops for our interns, even though I'm not the one that's necessarily running the workshop, I'm still am the one that's trying to help navigate, okay, this speaker or this presenter is coming through to do this. Okay, we need some engagement from the students. Okay, what are some questions or what are some things? Or, so our interns are looking at, trying to do such and such. What's the best way that you would recommend going up? Just something to get the ball rolling, right? And being that catalyst. So, just being able to do all of those things. So any of your skills, like I said, relationship building, the facilitation, right, is key. Definitely being able to work in ambiguity. Also, just being able to bring your own creativity, to put your own kind of spin on things. Definitely also, I mean, this isn't any gig, I think is important, but the being open to feedback, being receptive to it, I think is always key, right? Because you're going to make mistakes, you're going to stumble. The main thing is embracing those mistakes, right? It's just oh, okay, I stumbled on this because I didn't know, or I haven't done this before. It's oh, okay, now I know how to better do that. Or, okay, I was, given this critique of, I need to do X, Y, and Z better. So, okay, let me deliver X, Y, and Z better. What does that look like? And that's sometimes is going to Google and how do I improve such and such? Or what are some ways that I can, get better at this? Or, whichever. So it's just bringing your skills, but finding ways to allow your skills to adjust to the new area that you're going into, right? So, all of man, there's so much more I can go into, but that's really, some of the main things that I would say are some of those skills that I think are important when transitioning.
No, that's good. I feel like there was a word in there somewhere, a message of stop trying to print from a printer that has no ink.
Yeah.
Stop being at the MapQuest level when you're meant for Google Maps.
Right. No, that's real. It's super real. And I think about that, and I'm also, and I'm not saying this as some super expert, because I'm also still speaking to myself. Even though I've been in this role for a little bit under 2 years, I'm still learning. I'm still growing. I'm still hitting my head. And, I thought so much of it was, I got to grasp all of this. And I think it's just no, you just got to show, significant improvements each step of the way, right? Of just okay, I learned from this, I improved on this. Okay, I got more room to grow. And that's the one thing, is just never stop learning, never stop growing, always seeking ways to continue to develop all those things. But also, that's another thing, is owning your development. I know they talk about it all the time in higher ed, but it's never really shown. It don't change on this level either, because it's, sometimes the resources might be a little bit better, but there's still really no blueprint on, okay, this is how you develop it to get to this level. It's, no, I'm asking questions okay, I want to go here. What are some ways that you can help me to get to this level, right? Okay, these are the things that I'm interested in. Because if you don't say it, nobody's ever going to know. They don't know how to point you in any direction. And sometimes, not everybody, somebody may have a leadership title, but that don't make them a great leader per se, right? They just got the title. They won the race. That's all.
We know some of those leaders from
quite a few. Quite a few.
That's for a whole nother webinar. What would tell me about the job now. So you've been in this job for a little under 2 years. What have you learned? What have you enjoyed about it? What are the things that you're still kind of growing in? Like, what's the experience been like, and was it worth it to leave higher ed?
Yeah, yeah. Ooh, man. What am I still? Oh, one of the things I'm still like adjusting to is just the corporate like structure. I'll say this: when it comes to higher ed, I felt like, at least from my own experience, I felt like the roles that I worked in, they were a bit more loose in terms of rigidness sometimes. So I'm trying to say a lot without saying too much, right? So I'm trying to speak in
Yeah,
like a semi-coded language.
I
But
think I put you down.
things were, I would say like this. I felt like in higher ed I had a little bit more fun,
Mm,
right? In like the spaces that I was in, right? But on the side of that, fun don't pay the bills, so fun also does not increase your bank account, right? In different ways. So, even though I'll say the money has increased a little bit and that has helped in some capacities, but it's not as fun as I was in higher ed. That's a huge difference. Also, I think like the structure, like when it comes to uh maybe like team like dynamics, is also a bit, because I'm working with a much smaller team now, so it
mhm,
does feel a little bit more intense, like when it comes to like the work, like especially in our busy season, which like right now is like our busy season, so it seems like to be just a little bit more intense like on the workload wise. But that also
mm,
explains why you get paid a little bit more, because it's just like, okay, more is expected of you, right? And like everybody's like, oh, come to tech, come to tech, come to tech. But it's like you also have to be realistic too. It's gonna be a lot more work, and in most cases, at least I would say probably 97% of cases, is gonna probably be a lot more work than you may have been doing in like higher ed, right? And I don't think
mhm,
I think sometimes that's just not sold, properly. It's just more so looked at like, oh, come, to the corporate side because it's more money. Well, what is attached also to that money, right? Just so I know how to better prep myself. I think that's the key, is just being able to better present yourself when it comes to that, or know what to expect, right? You're walking in with a much clearer idea of what you're getting into. It was another part of your question. You said, I'm sorry. I want to make sure I'm answering all that you're saying. You
I
asked
think I heard
about
what you
the
like.
different. Oh, what I
Um,
like. Okay. One of the
yeah.
things I do like is I still get to do what it is that I'm passionate about, and it's impacting college students in some way, shape, or form. I think that's still huge, and that still is like one of those things where it's like, okay, let me kind of cherry pick, and this is something that I really, really want to still incorporate in the job that I'm doing right now. And that could also change, right? Because, like we said, the fields are changing. So I have to also be, you know, on the lookout to possibly, pivot if need be.
Mhm,
But I think when it comes to that, and still being on college campuses and building those relationships, I still get a chance to kind of like feed that passion a little bit, because I'm still connecting with, certain officials on campus when it comes to, okay, there's career fairs coming up, or, hey, we want to make more of an impact on these students. Can we do like an info session? Or, can you put me in touch with these student orgs to like, we want to just do maybe like a resume workshop, or excuse me, or something that, is still allowing me to build that relationship and feed that part, because I am a campus recruiter, but I'm not
mhm,
always on campus, right? Like how I was in higher ed, when every day I had to show up and I'm dealing with students in a very student facing job. I was, an academic advisor / student success coach that also managed the mentor program that we had as a part of our program that was geared towards assisting first gen limited income students. So it's all these things, right,
mhm,
that I'm dealing with a lot of students, but now I don't have a lot of that student interaction. So it's a bit, my stakeholder like percentages like change. So like the students are like the least of my daily interaction, Whereas in higher ed, that was majority of the work I do now. My daily interaction is majority my team, and the people that we have to work with, whether it's the talent acquisition side, whether it's the hiring managers and the different departments that we support. That could be from software engineering to IT to HR, for their interns, to finance and audit and all those different things. So my stakeholders are also people that are employers of the company, whereas in higher ed, majority of your stakeholders are going to be your students, depending on, of course, on your role, but majority of the time your students are the ones that you're like reporting out to. And students can be a little more not as intense of a word, but it could be a little more forgiving.
Yeah.
On some things. Whereas, it's not always like that on the corporate side. But, again, these are the things that you have to consider as you're looking to make your jump. And like, what is it that you're willing to work with? What are things that you're willing to do? And what are some things that you aren't willing to do when it comes to that, right? And I always say, go get your bag, right? Go get your funds. But also know that what comes with that, and be just as aware as possible of what you're kind of getting yourself into. And of course, you're not going to know every single thing, right? That's because you're not at those companies. But once you get in, learn the lay of the land, see how things are, see how it looks for you. Always do an assessment. Do I need to stay here? Do I need to look at pivoting? Do I need to go elsewhere? Am I better valued at other places or not? But I mean, of course, like the way the market looks now, it's a little bit wonky. So if you're going to make a choice, just be comfortable with that choice for a little bit of time, a little bit longer than you may have expected, because there was a point in time where people were getting in and jumping, year to year to new roles. It ain't that lucrative no more.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Doggone it, I done lost my thought. The closer I get to 40, the more I just start losing it. Let me ask the question that's here in the chat.
Okay.
Lizeth asks, since recruiting has been heavily impacted, do you know another area that you would still recommend for someone that would still like to interact with students?
Ooh.
I got a couple thoughts on this too. While you're thinking, I'll give a couple thoughts.
Okay.
So, yes, one, university recruiting, that always seems to be the popular one. When I was at Pinterest, I actually worked for an apprenticeship program, and it was people of a variety of ages. But there was also a program. It was like a summer program. It wasn't very long. It wasn't the entire summer, but it was for students that were interested in going into tech. Like they had a STEM background. They were in a STEM degree. And so when we recruited, I was just doing a ton of research at different schools. And I was using, all the popular stuff that you use. I can't think of the one that's primarily used by higher ed anymore. It escapes me for finding jobs for students. But we did a lot of that, of just looking for students for certain things. I think that HR has its place as well. There's definitely people who do that. I think I was just talking to somebody earlier today, instructional design.
Yeah.
Now that's like the kind of sort of working with students. You're impacting them by doing
Yes.
this work kind of on the back end of what these LMS systems look like. But those are a couple that I feel like I've noticed, or people that have gotten jobs into. So what are your
Yeah.
thoughts, Daryn?
No, you definitely are spot on with the HR part, because like people will think like HR is recruiting, but it's not necessarily. HR has so many different aspects, right? You got like benefits and rewards, you have compensation, you have
Employee
some
relations.
recruiting, right? All those things. You got what is it? Employee relations, all those different things. Some different areas. I'm trying to think. Honestly, I can't really think of too many that still, unless actually, if you don't necessarily look at corporate per se, but maybe looking at like ed tech, or like certain like scholarship like programs. So like, like we know about, Thurgood Marshall, what is it, TMCF, Thurgood Marshall College Fund, or the Gates Millennial Scholarship. These are still programs that it's not necessarily working with students on the day-to-day, but you're working for students on the day-to-day. So they're still going out and doing recruiting, but they're not necessarily doing, like, their work is structured differently, right? So it could be like you're maybe collecting donors, for these scholarships, but this is still work that impacts students. And you can be a part of the recruiting in a roundabout way. Like if you all are maybe going to like a student, something that impacts students heavy, like some type of conference, whether it's like a NSBE, which is the National Society of like Black Engineers or something like that, or anything that, is you can go to like, what are some of those like big like student thing? Like hackathons maybe, right?
Oh
So
yeah.
say if your company if you're working at a tech company and they host a hackathon, that can also be a recruiting opportunity, but you're not necessarily doing recruiting work all the time. But this is something that you can do. You can kind of speak to what your company does, or you can just work in whatever like role. So like I know when we go to different fairs, like when we have different offices. So I remember we were at a fair in Austin, Texas, and we had some of the engineers that were former interns come out to the fair as well to talk to people, to talk to students who were looking at internships, because they can speak directly from the internship aspect and what it's like to transition from intern into a converted employee. So you can still do a lot of the work, but I think it's just like, that's another thing of like relationship building, right? That never stops no matter the role that you're in. So if it's something like, oh, you know what, it's almost campus recruitment time, let me reach out to the campus recruitment team. Hey, can I help you all out today? Or is there any assistance that, if you can kind of lend like your expertise in regards to that. So that's a roundabout way. I'm not sure if that answers your question fully, because I don't think there's a lot of roles that are solely tied directly to like student recruiting outside of student recruiting or university recruiting, truly. But you can still assist. Just it's going to be in like a roundabout way, though. It might not be the main. It probably won't be the main focus of your job. It'll just be something that's like extra or like additional on your behalf.
Yeah.
So if you're in like learning and development, you're impacting, but you're not like seeing it like in its like fully formed stage. Like you're not seeing it in use by the students. It's like working for like Blackboard, right? So like Blackboard is used by the students. But I know if I work for Blackboard, I'm not working with the students. I'm going to be, working maybe with, some of the advisors that utilize it, or some of the instructors, some of the faculty. But I'm not going to see how it impacts the students as they're using it in their day to day. But I'm still impacting students day to day, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And so I call those kind of student adjacent roles. So
Yeah,
some that are like, you still want to have an impact on a student experience. But for sure, and I mean, you mentioned, the internship piece. A ton of companies have that. Or if they have just like a summer program period where you're doing shadowing, or you're doing a fellowship or an assistantship or something like that, where you might get the opportunity to kind of work with students. This wasn't a corporate job that I had. When I worked at Caltech, they have this, I guess, really well-known summer research program there. And it is literally students from all over the world that come to, they're paired with like a mentor, and a professor that works at the university, and they work on a project together for the summer.
Okay.
And then they present it like at the end, end of the summer or whatever. But it was interesting. So I was like, I never thought about research in that way. Like,
Yeah.
there's like whole programs for research, and like, oh yeah, this is something you can do. So even though it was technically, at a higher ed institution, there may be some opportunities for that. Um, I think that I had an interview this was a while ago for this company that they had a higher ed facing, like, you're almost like a account manager or customer success kind of manager for higher education accounts. So you were
Yep.
talking to people that worked in higher education, and it was more like consulting of some of the things that they might need to do. You basically kind of went in and kind of assessed what they were doing, maybe in certain areas, and then giving your recommendations to it. And I'm like, if there is anything folks in higher ed can do, we can tell you
Yep.
where
Yeah.
you probably need to fix or whatnot in order to get better student engagement, because that's what we do. So I think it's also good to like keep your eyes open. Yes, you want to be involved with students, but there might be some other opportunities out there that allow you to be kind of student adjacent, or even have an impact period on just the higher ed experience through like a consulting role.
Yeah. With that, yeah, you hit it on the head with a lot of that. Like we can still I think that's another thing that we run into from higher ed folks who are transitioning, where they're just like, oh, I still want to impact students. Sometimes, honestly, that separation is going to be like the liberating part of what you're trying to get to, and removing yourself sometimes from that day to day. Like your freedom is on the other side of that liberation, right? Of being able to separate yourself from that. And I don't mean that in a bad way at all. I mean it in the terms of, you know what, it's okay to kind of like switch it up because it's what we know, right? It's, you know, we're so like, you know, we've become accustomed to, you know, working with students daily that, you know, okay, oh, I want to switch, but then I still want to, but then sometimes it might not even line up like that, but that can be still the perfect opportunity, but it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with you know, student work or direct student facing or, you know, different things like that. But it's still a dope opportunity that, you know, is going to help you grow in all those other aspects too. But also there's nothing wrong with wanting certain parameters or certain you know, your certain like what are those things called when people were like, oh, I want to you know, it has to, your deal breakers, right? You that could be your deal breaker in a job, right? Maybe that's not, you know, what you want to do. It's like, oh, I still want to do. So maybe looking at like those consulting companies. You actually, Kristen, you remember you mentioned that research that is done. There's actually companies that do research that impacts students like directly. So, you know, it may not necessarily be a higher ed job, but it could still be consulting research that's student impacting, right? So it's so many different opportunities, so many things that are out there. It's ridiculous. Like I see stuff all the time. I be hearing about stuff that I'm just like, how did you even come across this? Like, how did you discover this, right? You know, stuff like that. So it's so much out there. Anything you honestly, I think is really anything that you can think of, it's probably out there. You just kind of course, it's not going to be readily shown to you, but I think you can find it or whatever. The same way, like, you know, just utilizing resources, right? You know, Facebook groups and LinkedIn groups, and sometimes just a Google search will just bring up the craziest stuff that you've ever find when it comes to, you know, different like job opportunities and stuff like that. So just really just having an open mind. I think that is, and that's something that I tell interns all the time, is just don't box yourself in. Any opportunity that you have to grow and something that can kind of like take you, still provide you with that same experience, but maybe in a different package, keep your mind open to it as well, right? Because it's something that you might get into and you fall in love with, and you're just like, oh snap, what was that other thing that I was thinking about? I don't even remember what that is now. Like, and here we are. And that's for anybody, right? Like that's one of those things where it's just like, hey, just keep your mind open. Really, really, really keep your mind open, and don't pigeonhole yourself to one particular area, because that is going to be limiting for you, right? And you don't want to ever put any limits on yourself, right? Because I think we got enough people in society that'll do it for you. So
It's true. I was trying to look for, I was paying attention, but I was trying to look for their company. I remember they actually came and visited when I was in grad school. But they were research. They were literally looking at big data from higher education to make decisions. And they were able to do research where they were like, we can not only tell you like this is the reason why your students aren't graduating, but we can narrow it down to the exact class, professor, and section that is
whoa.
doing like the results. Like, and is this is the big spot here that's actually where people fail, and this is impacting your graduation rates or what. Like it was amazing. I think the company was based in Texas somewhere, but there's tons of companies like that that are actually doing this work. So I just wanted to kind of throw that out there. I know that we are at time. I had two more questions I wanted to ask you.
Yeah, no, I mean, I got time. If y'all got time, I got time.
So one, you have a DEI background and a love and a passion for that. So how have you been able to integrate that into your work?
Okay, yeah, no, that's great. That's excellent question. And I do have to preface it. It's not like an official like DEI background. Like it's more so just, well, one, like being an HBCU graduate, but wanting to see, you know, still wanting to impact HBCUs in a roundabout way, right? So, like I said, it's a lot about finding ways to bring a bit of like your persona, your passions, your desires into your role in a measured way, right? Like I couldn't just show up and be like, all right, this is what we need to do, and just start banging the desk and just changing everything, changing up the guard. Like it doesn't quite happen like that. But you start to, look around and you kind of assess certain things. Oh, we're at these career fairs. I'm not really seeing a lot of diversity in our candidate pools. What does that look like for our interns usually? I'm just getting here, but how does that look? Oh, we've tried this and we've tried that. And I'm just like, did you try it, or did you just do something that didn't get the results that you wanted and you just said, okay, we're not going to do that again? That's not really a try. That's just all right, let's just, do this and get it over with type of approach. So I never like anything like that. So I say all that to say, just of course, after looking at things like, of course, like data assessment, right, and data collection. I mean, that you're doing a lot of that in higher ed. That's something that's going to definitely help you as well in the corporate space. One of the things that I try to do is just come up with ways to help us revamp our approach to campus like partnerships or campus outreach, right? What schools are we going to? Okay, what is it that we're looking for? What is it that we're not getting? I even had a hiring manager reach out to me and say, hey, can we kind of get some more diverse candidates in here? Like, we need some diversity? I was like, I'm glad that you said that. Thank you. So, you take that feedback and you bring it, to who you need to, and, you come up with some ideas. And I was like, okay, these are some things that we can do. So you look at different ways. A lot of stuff is tied to money. So that's another thing too, that you have to think about is, does my department have a budget to support some of these things, right? Because a lot of stuff is going to honestly, a lot of stuff is going to be buy-in. You have to be able to like pay them. It's really boils down paying to playing. And I rightfully so in so many capacities, in so many ways, I completely agree with it. And so I'm like, I don't even fault the schools, when it comes to that, because, well, we'll be here for a few hours if we get into discussing that. But I will say one of the things that I did though was just kind of try to come up with ways that we can reach. Okay, what is it that we're missing? Okay, so we don't necessarily have the money that can get us in front of a ton of HBCUs. So let's look at, okay, where are we located? All right, we have an office in Austin, Texas. Oh, you know what? There's an HBCU in Austin, Texas. Let's try and start reaching out to them, right? Because we have an office there. So we can't say that we don't have the money to get behind and we don't have this. Nope, it's right here in our face. It's right here, where we have an office. So let's make sure that, if we're going to do outreach to all these other schools, why leave out this school too that is, maybe able to assist us in not just, building our, like increasing our diversity, but also we can help be a resource to the school because maybe they haven't had, like a ton of companies come through and, try to help them when it comes to, like I said, those resume review workshops, those info sessions, even just a tabling where it's just like, oh, y'all really want to help us. Like y'all are really pouring back into us. And it's just like, yeah, like we can't say like we want candidates to do this, that, and the third, and we don't even show up, to help you all get to the, like I talked about barrier removal. Mm-hmm. Barrier removal is real. So finding ways, right? Looking at even community college talent, right? And different ways that, we can get them involved in the work that we're doing, even different types of programs. So, I know we've looked at a few different programs who is it? Oh man, I forget that. I'm seeing the colors in my head. They're blue and yellow. I know one is like opportunity at work, and then the other is, oh my goodness, I forget them. I interviewed with them a long time ago when I was out in the Bay, but I forget the name of the company. But anywho, companies like that, things that are geared towards helping non-traditional, or you know what, not even non-traditional, I'll just say ultimately underrepresented talent pools and candidates and minorities and historically monetized populations and stuff like that, especially when it comes to tech. If you look around tech, there's a lot of underrepresentation when you look at gender imbalance, when you look at ethnics, when it comes to different types of ethnic groups that are either overrepresented or those that are underrepresented, right? And how can we help like make some type of change when it comes to that? So it's really just just trying to find solutions to problems that you see. And I know if I have that desire or some passion for seeing some type of increase in diversity, and it's I'm gonna say it's one of the toughest conversations to continuously have, and one of the toughest things to always see, where it's just not, you know, it can't just be one way that it's changing. Like, it can't just be the internship program that is focused on increasing or improving the diversity optics, because it's only a 10-week program. What about, you know, company culture? Like, what are different things? So, right. So kind of having those difficult conversations of like, what can we do overall, like when it comes to like candidates and hires and stuff like that, because there's nothing that's really, how are we gonna ask for diversity when it comes to interns, but we're bringing them into non-diverse environments? Like, that doesn't quite add up.
Yeah, that's true. Because it's like, and it's the higher ed thing too.
Yeah,
When they
yeah.
want to get new professionals, and I've worked at a place like that before, where I was I think I was a resident director at the time, and they were trying to get more. We talked about this at our last doc talk about recruiting for a school that's in the middle of nowhere. We need more,
Yeah.
people of color, but we're literally in the middle of some cornfields. Yes, it's a big
Oh,
name, big
yeah.
10 or Big 12 school, or it's in the
Oh, yeah.
SEC. That's fantastic, but it may not be in a desirable place. So you have to
Absolutely
make it a place that is
desirable.
desirable.
Uh-huh.
And I remember even in doing my research with the undergrads, some of them felt like they got the bait and switch in their admissions process. The
Mhm.
same way that I think some folks of color who are professionals, they were like, yeah, I came to the preview day, and there was lots of underrepresented students everywhere. And then my first day of class, there was nobody to be seen.
Tell
And
me about it.
so I
Tell me
think
about
it's really important to also, like, don't put on the show,
it. Nah.
be honest about it, but also be honest about the work or maybe the help that you are looking for. I know earlier someone was asking, this is kind of along the lines of what Lizette was kind of asking, what are some other areas? I think it's important too to bring yourself to it. They may not even realize the options that are there that you bring in. They may
Uh-huh.
not even be thinking of community colleges or anything like that. That's something that I brought up in my recruiting role. I was like, you know what, where we get a lot of underrepresented folks who maybe have, a skill set in this area, but just haven't been given an opportunity for this. We should look at community colleges. And it was California. So, there's 50 million community
I was
colleges
about to say, you
everywhere.
got a community college in like every corner in
Every corner, right? So
California.
I think there's something about thinking of what you can bring to the table for a company, looking at
Really?
what is they need, their companies, and you're like, man, what can I bring from higher education that can be
Hmm.
useful for them to make this more of a student facing role, or where we can be more higher ed adjacent in that way. So I would definitely encourage folks to do that as well, to not just think about the transferable skills and how you have to translate the work that you did from higher ed into corporate speak, but what are the higher ed things that you did that would actually work pretty well in a corporate setting? And they've
Uh-huh.
just never thought about it because our worlds are so completely different. Yeah. So I have one last question I want to ask, and then I'm going to let you think about it, and then I'm going to give some church announcements
Okay.
because I feel like that's where we are. So the question I like to ask every guest, or at least I'm trying to, is to tell me about a favorite student or higher ed story. Um, Obviously, it has to be as appropriate as you can make it, but
Of
it can
course.
be funny, it can be inspirational, or just, man, this was really interesting. So I'm gonna give you a couple minutes to think about it while I'm giving some last announcements, and then we'll end with you on answering that question.
Okay.
Um,
Got you. Got you. Do your thing.
all right. So thank you to everybody that came. We're going to have Daryn answer this last question, but two last things. One, next week we have a special treat. We have three guests, and actually Daryn knows all these people too, or at least one of them. Diana, one of our mutual
Hey.
friends, and two other individuals that I worked with. We all actually worked together at San Jose State, and we're going to be talking about navigating toxicity in student affairs.
Okay. Come on.
And
Come
just
on.
talking about our experiences, talking about the things that we did to kind of navigate through it, and ultimately what helped. And a lot of us together as a unit were actually very helpful to each other. So I know that's going to be a part of the conversation. And then, second, there is an offer for folks that are registered for this event. If you are registered, I'm going to have a special discount for a resume and interview prep package. And it's the lowest price that I have ever given for these packages. And so, if you are registered for this event, I'll be sending out an email no later than by the end of tomorrow. I might send it tonight, depending on how sleepy I am. And you will have access to this. And it is only for folks that are registered. So if you have friends that are like, man, you better register, all you have to do to get registered, even if you haven't before, is when you try to click on this link to see the replay and you haven't registered, it'll allow you to register so then you can see the replay. So for folks that are interested, it's going to be the lowest rate that I offer for this package, and it's called the Drop the Banner package. We trying to drop these green banners on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
So I'll be sending that information via email, and everybody will have access to that. So, all right, Daryn, you've had a couple minutes to think.
All
So,
right.
what's that student higher ed student affairs story?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So, okay, I'll take it a little bit back before my last higher ed role. I'll go to the one that was right before it. I worked at a local like community college for their college readiness program. So with that program, there was a there is a partnership between the program, the college, and the local school district. So I was one of the coaches of the college prep program, and I had my own high school that I was placed in. So within the high school, you do all the things, right? Stuff that helped me actually get to where I'm at now, which was like we do the recruitment of the students, we do facilitating actual workshops that I'm putting on, building relationships with, the staff at the school, because I'll need to do things like take them on college visits. So I need to get in touch with the teachers to let them know, like, we're not just doing this stuff as like fun, but we're doing, stuff to like help them remove that barrier, right, of getting to college, seeing what it looks like, letting them know it's possible, all that good stuff. So, in this last round of recruitment in that role, so I started 2019. So those were the 2020 graduates. Then my second set of students were the 2021 graduates. And then the students that I was recruiting for were 2022 graduates. So those were my like 3 classes that I had before I ended up leaving. For the 2022 babies, I actually left before I had a chance to work with them, for everything to help them navigate, that life after. I left them with February 22 and they graduated June. So I left before they had a chance, before they graduated.
Mhm.
But, of course, throughout that time, one of the things that I'm big on is, if I have helped you, if I worked with you before, if I got you, I always got you, pretty much, like when it came to those that were in my program. Also, if you wanted help, I never forced my help on anybody. It's just like, hey, I'm a resource. I'm here to assist, whichever. Like, you can always use me. I may reach out to check on you, but I'll never be like, oh, you need to do such and such and such. It's only if you like ask me, or only if we have that type of relationship, right? So of course, you got your students and they come to you for every single thing, not just school related. But like, my office was the hangout spot, right? They came to eat, they came to kick it, they came to vent, they came to skip class, and I was like, nope, you got to go back. I can't help you there. But one of my students, man, I call her like, she's like everything. She's like, little sister. She's like, if I had a daughter, she's like a daughter. It's like my baby. I felt like, I helped like, raise her to get to where she's at. So she's in her second year of school now, and she is she's studying I want to say civil engineering or mechanical engineering, one of the two. But I know that with that, she's a first gen student, right? So she has an older sister that has gone through the college process, but not this particular aspect of like, understanding what it's like to these internships and the need and the resources and all those things, right? So as I transition into my current role, I'm like, hey, make sure you're getting on your internship thing. I'm seeing these students are having internships in high school and they're building on that experience, which is helping them to get roles soon as they finish. Your main thing is that you want to get that role, that coming out that minimum 80K upon graduation from undergrad. So just keeping in touch with her, checking in on her and stuff. So from time to time, we just have like convos about how she's doing in general as a person, how she's doing in school. And so, as I'm going out to fairs, I feel like one of them parents is like, also looking out for their kids too. So I'm talking to other companies on her behalf. So then I could bring stuff back to her of just like, hey, I know you don't necessarily know who this company is, but you should research them. I talk to them on your behalf. They're expecting you to reach out to them. They're looking to your email, right? At least just start the conversation. This doesn't guarantee that you'll be able to do anything, but you can at least have, you've at least have that introduction, right? You have direct access to somebody that works for a company that's in the field of what you're trying to go into, because you're not even sure which way you're trying to go. So it's just like anything that comes across that, I think can like be of assistance or help her. I reach out to the person first and I say, hey, I got somebody I would love for you to connect with. I wonder if you could, just have a brief conversation with them or talk to them about such and such. And just like, yeah, just send her my way or whatever. And so I reached back out to her. I'm like, hey, you should follow with these people. I reached out to them on your behalf. I was like, I'm not trying to put you on on the spotlight, but you got to start thinking of life after graduation. You don't start prepping for the end at the end, right? You don't start prepping for a marathon the day of or the week before the marathon. Like, this is months of preparation. That's the same way how you have to approach your academics and your professional career. These are things I didn't know when I was in school. These are things I wish somebody would tell me. But as I'm working with students, as I'm navigating these spaces, I'm like, oh, you know what? This is what students need to hear. This is what they're looking for. Like, this is things that assist. So I'm still able to have those convos with her. I love like our connection in that regards. And it's not, I try not to be overbearing at all. I'm really super hands off. It's just when I go to affairs and I run into stuff that could assist her, I'm just like, hey, this is what you want to do. I'm gonna send it your way. I'll talk to you later. Bye. And keep it going. Because I don't want to be like, oh, you're bugging me. Oh, you're, all those things. It's just like, nope. I just try to, do it like that and still just connect her with those resources, but also just showing like, hey, somebody got your back. I know you're doing this and feeling like you might be in it alone, but no, somebody really like cares about your well-being and wants to help you succeed the way that you say that you do. And of course, you can't make people do anything, but you can at least provide them, with the resources and let them choose what they want to do. They'll either use it, they'll either not use it, they may squander it, but at the end of the day, just like, hey, we had the convo. You said that's what you wanted to do. I pointed you in a direction. If you choose not to do it, cool. If you choose to do it, even more cool. So, that's one of my favorite like stories of just like, I still have a lot of those students though too. So it's not just her, but she's the main one that I think of right now because like she's the most communicative or whatnot. But she's always reaching out. Oh, I need to get a headshot. Oh, I need to update my LinkedIn page. Oh, I need to do these things. It's like, yes, you do. Do all those things. Go to campus, go to career services, do some Google searching. Join those student orgs. Like we talked about hackathons, attend those, do that, get that experience. So stuff like that. But that's one of my favorite, stories because even her coming into the program initially, she was just doing it on some like social stuff, right? Just to be like, oh, my friends are in it, or I know people, or, Mr. Moore is the cool teacher. So we just gonna hang out there. It's just like, oh no, he actually like thinks of us as great. And he's expecting us to like also see ourselves as great. It's just like, yes, why should you not? Like, I'm telling you, when you get out into the world, there's going to be enough people that's going to, deny you and try to, detract you and make you feel like you don't matter and all those things. But while you're here in my classroom, I'm going to make sure we build you up. I'll make sure you go out into this world fully equipped. And, you feeling even more confident because we done prepped for this, right? Like we done prepped for the test well in advance, not the day before. So, just having those conversations with the students and those interactions. And it's just like, I just feel like I said, like a super like big brother or like, like a father like figure without like, being too much. Cause I also understand sometimes that stuff can be overwhelming and people can just do too much. And you're just like, all right, man, cool out. Like I'm good. Like, leave me be.
No, I appreciate that student story because one thing I want to make sure gets across is I'm not a higher ed hater. That's where I'm
No,
not. I
right.
simply like to highlight, stories of folks that have found that their skill set can work for other industries. Because you may not want to work in higher ed forever. You might want to try something different. And you might leave and you might come back, and that's
Yeah.
okay. So a part of this conversation is helping to build some community, give folks something to think about. And so hopefully everybody enjoyed their time listening, whether you're listening to it live or you're listening to it on the replay. I hope everybody has a wonderful weekend and thank you for coming.
Yes.
Good night.
Good night. Peace.